In this presentation, we're going to do a deep dive into all the major features of UTM Accelerated 9.2. We're calling it Accelerated because it's all about accelerating our competitive advantage and your network security business. You might be wondering, how do we decide what goes into a major release like this? Of course, a lot of the direction comes from partners like yourself and your customers. But another major influence is the major trends in networking that impact security. Let's have a quick look at some of those major trends over the last several months that UTM 9.2 will address. First of all, it wasn't that long ago when network security looked something like this, where all users had a standard issue Windows machine and maybe a BlackBerry, and all IT infrastructure, such as mail, file storage, and other services, were all hosted on-premise. And the most anyone needed for network protection was a firewall and maybe an anti-spam solution. How things have changed in recent years. Now you have every kind of user using every type of device imaginable and needing access to corporate IT services from everywhere in the world. In addition, companies are increasingly using cloud services for file storage, CRM, and even productivity apps. The amount of infrastructure and solutions required to secure everything is really ballooned, and all the while, the threat landscape continues to grow more sophisticated. This all makes it extremely challenging for IT to secure everything effectively while still enabling everyone to be productive. One of the most recent trends in the threat landscape is that of advanced threats, or advanced persistent threats, which is another commonly used term. We also are seeing a lot of increasingly stealthy botnets, which have a lot in common with advanced threats. At the heart of these attacks, there's often a mastermind, organization, or criminal which manages the attack and the harvesting of data with an infrastructure of command and control servers that they use to communicate with infected machines. Where advanced persistent threats are unique and particularly troubling is in the fact that they're often targeted attacks. They may target specific industries, organizations, or even individuals, and may involve significant research into the staff, infrastructure, and operations of the target in order to identify the ideal way to get a foothold in the organization. Then these types of attacks involve seeding some kind of malware that can be used to gain an entry point. This can be an infected website, a phishing-like email, or an infected email attachment, or even something as mundane as a USB stick with malware left in the parking lot of the target organization, in hopes that an unsuspecting user might pick it up and plug it into their work computer to see what's going on. Once the threat has a foothold in one of the systems in the network, it will discreetly call home, but may wait hours, days, or even weeks before doing this or anything else. These kinds of advanced threats often lie low and go slow. At some point, it may get instructions to covertly spread by taking advantage of vulnerabilities on other systems or using lifted credentials to gain access to other systems. Ultimately, whether the threat is fast-moving or slow and persistent, its goal is the same: to silently exfiltrate data out of the organization through whatever means it can. It might get the information it wants by scanning emails, documents, Skype, or even IM conversations, or perhaps covertly operating mics or webcams in the environment to monitor live conversations. I mentioned how the web is one of the entry points for advanced attacks like we just discussed. Well, the web happens to be the #1 source of all malware, simply because it's easy to reach large numbers of people and it's usually easy to infect them. Now, web protection is also getting more complex for the average IT manager. There's not just the ever-evolving threat landscape to worry about, but all these other dimensions to the problem as well, such as inappropriate content, vulnerabilities and patch management, data loss, productivity, app control, bandwidth management, and web server integrity, to name just a few. Properly securing users and keeping them productive is becoming an increasing challenge for the average IT manager. And then there's the increasing problem of email privacy. You may have seen some of these stories in the news lately. The fact is that most email sits around or travels the internet in plain text format, making it easy for online mail companies, government agencies like the NSA, and others to scan email and use the content in whatever way they choose. Many companies are increasingly concerned about this, and rightly so, but are daunted by the expense and complexity of traditional email data protection solutions. And last but not least, another noteworthy event in the last year or so is the discontinuation of Microsoft's Forefront TMG product. This is a product that a lot of Microsoft-centric IT shops relied on, in one way or another, for part of their network security. And it's now going away. And partners like yourself are looking for the ideal replacement solution to offer to your customers. So as you'll see, this was another influencing trend in the development of UTM 9.2. So in summary, the key trends driving the development of UTM 9.2 accelerated include advanced threats, the complexity of web security for the average IT manager, concerns about email privacy and data loss, and the discontinuation of Microsoft TMG. Now let's have a look at how we're solving some of today's top network security problems with UTM 9.2. There are 5 key areas of focus for this release, and I'm going to cover each of these in some detail, as well as a few other notable features that don't fall into these areas. Let's start with threat protection. Our objective here was to bring enterprise-level protection to bear on this problem to detect and block advanced threats, as well as identify and contain infected systems. The UTM was already uniquely positioned to provide this kind of protection, as it has many of the essential components you need, including an intrusion prevention system to identify the necessary attack patterns, DNS lookups to identify known command and control traffic destinations, web protection to block advanced web malware from entering the network, as well as command and control traffic trying to leave, and Level 7 app control with deep packet inspection to further identify advanced threat traffic on the network. Now what's new is that we've combined these capabilities to provide coordinated, multi-layer protection from advanced threats and identification of command and control traffic. We've also performance optimized the IPS, added our advanced web malware detection engine from the web appliance to our UTM, introduced live protection and selective sandboxing to deal with unidentifiable suspicious content, and added a new dashboard widget, alerts, and reports to go along with this feature. You'll recognize this illustration from earlier, when we covered how advanced threats work. Well now, I'm going to show how we prevent, block, identify, and sandbox these types of threats to provide enterprise-class protection in UTM 9.2. It all starts with great multi-layer protection. Our Sophos web, email, and endpoint protection prevent infections from entering the network in the first place. But that's not new. What is new is the new advanced web malware detection in 9.2 that can emulate JavaScript to catch even the most sophisticated, obfuscated, and polymorphic web threats. In 9.2, we also ensure we can block network attacks and breaches from outside by performance optimizing our intrusion prevention system. Also new is our multi-layer protection, with DNS, app control, web, and IPS all working better together to identify command and control traffic and block it from leaving the network. And then, of course, we're able to identify infected systems on the network so they can be contained and cleaned up before they become more of a problem. And finally, there's our new selective sandboxing that sends suspicious files and code to the Sophos Labs cloud for analysis so we can detonate potential threats in a safe environment and provide new threat intelligence back to all customer UTMs quickly and efficiently. Sophos Labs also collects a large number of analytics data and statistics that helps us in fine-tuning our sandboxing, as well as identifying emerging trends and problem areas to focus our threat research on. This is a snapshot of the new Advanced Threat Protection dashboard at Sophos Labs, where they can see what types of threats we're dealing with, which module in the UTM is identifying the threat, and where the command and control servers are located. So how is all this implemented in the UTM? It all starts with a new option under Network Protection for Advanced Threat Protection, and it can be turned on with the flip of a switch. This turns on Advanced Threat Protection, which coordinates detection across DNS requests, IPS patterns, app control packet inspection, and web traffic. So while there's a lot going on behind the scenes, as we've discussed, we've made this as simple as possible for the administrator. Of course, you need both network and web modules to take full advantage of this new protection, but it's included at no extra charge. It activates a new dashboard widget, which you can see here, which will provide an obvious alert if any command or control botnet type traffic is detected on the network. You can easily click through from there to see a list of advanced threat events, which can tell you what system or user is infected, the nature of the threat, who it's trying to connect with, how often, and what type of detection caught it. In this case, it was a simple test website at Sophos that triggered the detection, but this can be extremely helpful in quickly identifying and containing infected systems on the network. You can even drill down from here further if you like, and get additional information in this report. You'll find a new option under Scan Settings to send suspicious content to Sophos Labs for analysis, which is the opt-in for selective sandboxing. So how does all this stack up against competitors' systems? Well, let's start with a couple of companies who focus on enterprise advanced threat protection. FireEye is a leader in this space, and they focus on APT protection for enterprises with their on-premise sandboxing solution. They will equip a customer's data center with racks of virtual machines and do the sandboxing locally, which can get extremely costly. It's a model which just doesn't make economic sense really, and that's why we feel the cloud and Sophos Labs is the better place to do this. It offers economies of scale that make it affordable for us to include this in the UTM at no extra charge. So while we don't compete directly with FireEye, we do bring the same type of protection and technology to bear on the problem, and in a much simpler, more affordable way. Now, Palo Alto also offers cloud-based sandboxing, similar to what we're launching with 9.2. They've been doing this for some time and have a significantly greater scale of operation than we do at the moment, but nevertheless, we are very competitive with what Palo Alto is doing as well. Now, of course, both these organizations are more enterprise-focused and as a result more complex and expensive. Our advantage is in bringing this enterprise class level of protection to the mid-market simply and affordably by integrating it into our UTM at no extra charge. Now, what about our direct competitors in the UTM space? Fortinet offers a choice of on-box or cloud-based sandboxing, along with a botnet database. And as I mentioned earlier, we feel the cloud-based sandboxing offers a much greater economy of scale for customers rather than trying to utilize their on-premise hardware to do this task. SonicWall, on the other hand, only offers basic IP-based botnet filtering and no sandboxing, making our solution a much better choice for protection from advanced threats. In summary here, our multi-layered advanced threat protection with cloud-based sandboxing compares very well with Fortinet and is a much better solution than SonicWall. The next major area we're going to look at is how we've made web protection a lot smarter and simpler. I think you're going to love it. Our objective here was challenging, but the development team has delivered in spades. They were tasked with delivering enterprise-class secure web gateway functionality and making it simple. As you can see, the list of new web protection features is extensive. And if you're familiar with our dedicated Sophos web appliance, you'll notice that we've brought a lot of the great features customers raved about on that platform to the UTM in 9.2. It really enables the UTM to operate as an enterprise-level secure web gateway. Now, rather than go through this full list here, let's have a look at these new features. The first thing you'll notice is the new Global tab for web filtering. The new design offers better organization, fewer tabs, and greatly simplifies working with proxy profiles. We've actually added more features, but made it simpler at the same time. We now offer the best transparent proxy mode in the industry, with accurate, reliable support for single sign-on with Active Directory, something a lot of our competitors really struggle with. We've got a very innovative approach, and it just works. We've also implemented a new way of doing authentication by device type, as you can see here. You can now do single sign-on with Macs and Windows, and a captive portal for other devices like tablets and smartphones if you want, all without having to use proxy profiles now. And we've got an innovative new feature that can enforce URL filtering without decrypting HTTPS traffic. Of course, the man-in-the-middle option for full decryption and scanning is still there, but this new option provides a nice compromise where you want policy enforcement while maintaining the integrity and privacy of the encrypted web traffic. As I mentioned, authentication by device type is now possible without having to create a variety of different proxy profiles. You can automatically detect the device that's trying to access the web through the UTM and authenticate it in a number of ways, such as I've shown here, where a browser captive portal is used to authenticate users and enforce their policy on their mobile device. The new policy user interface is also much more elegant and simple. You can see your policies and their associated filter actions in a list, like shown here, with the default base policy at the bottom. Again, there's no need for proxy profiles to implement different group and user-based policies now in UTM 9.2. A new filter action wizard replaces what used to be a few different tabs for setting up your filter action options. It's nicely organized into a 5-step wizard that pops up, making it super convenient and intuitive. As you can see here, there's also a new warn option for site category filtering, which is great if you don't need a rigid enforcement policy but still want to remind users and monitor them if they visit sites and categories that may not be suitable for your environment. Now, if a user visits a site in a category set to warn, they'll see a message appear in their browser, warning them that the site is in a category they may not be safe, but they're given the option to proceed at their own risk. You'll notice there's still a dual scan antivirus option, but what's new is behind the scenes, in our new advanced web malware detection that's part of our new updated Sophos engine that can emulate JavaScript in real time as it's downloaded from a web server for any signs of malicious behavior. This is important for catching the latest polymorphic and obfuscated JavaScript threats. You'll also notice a new option to block potentially unwanted applications with just a single click. This includes hundreds of web-based apps that are not necessarily malware, but most organizations don't want on their network. There's also a new option to enforce allowed domains for Google Apps, which can be used to block users from accessing personal Google accounts on the network. One of the most requested features is the new policy test tool. It allows administrators to easily and quickly find out what policy is preventing a user from accessing a site, or they can use this to test a policy to ensure it's working as expected. It's a great time saver and a highly requested feature, and we're happy to introduce it in UTM 9.2. There's also a new tab under filtering options for website reclassification, allowing administrators to override category or reputation of sites if desired. And there's a total of 6 new reports that provide additional useful information about users, categories, URLs, and domains. And there's also new reports for identifying potentially problematic users, such as those trying to download viruses, trying to violate policy, or potential unwanted application downloaders. And the web filtering log search has also been greatly enhanced with new fields for log searching, which is a great tool for forensic investigations. The displayed results are also much easier to read and more user-friendly, presented in a report-like format, complete with color coding, as you can see here. Another great feature with web protection in UTM 9.2 is that we've expanded the web and endpoint protection integration to include Sophos Enterprise Console managed endpoints. Up until now, the UTM could manage endpoints directly, and as of 9.1 they could even get their web policy from the UTM. However, the endpoint management in the UTM was only really practical with hundreds of endpoints, limiting its scalability. Now, with the ability to integrate with Sophos Enterprise Console, which can manage thousands and thousands of endpoints, the UTM can provide web policy to much larger organizations than ever before. It should really expand the cross-sell opportunities for you for UTM to a ton of our larger endpoint customers. Setting it up is as simple as copying the host name and key to Sophos Enterprise Console. Once that's done, the endpoints managed will automatically obtain their web policy from the UTM and enforce it, wherever that user happens to be. On the network or off, it doesn't matter. They're protected wherever they go. And that's the beauty of Sophos Web and Endpoint Protection. And now it works with the UTM and Sophos Enterprise Console Managed Endpoints, a great new feature in UTM 9.2. So how does our web protection stack up with our top competitors? Of course, all leading UTM vendors provide acceptable web filtering solutions. However, where we all differ is in how time-consuming it is to set up and maintain on a daily basis, and how easy and affordable it is to get insights into user activity on the web. And this is where we can outperform both Fortinet and SonicWall clearly and easily. As you can see, we've invested heavily in ease of use throughout the web protection module, and making common day-to-day tasks easy to manage for the administrator. We also offer our unique web and endpoint capability that allows users to take their web policy and malware filtering with them when they leave the network, something none of our competitors can offer. The third area I want to cover is how we've made email encryption and DLP on the UTM extremely simple in UTM 9.2. The problem with traditional email encryption solutions is that they're often expensive and complex. So our objective was simple: make it easy and affordable so customers could meet compliance requirements or just protect the privacy and integrity of their important emails without a lot of effort and frustration. Fortunately, we had great success in the past with our SPX email encryption and DLP in our dedicated email appliances. So we wanted to bring that great technology to the UTM, and that's exactly what we did. In UTM 9.2, we now have SPX email encryption for sending encrypted emails to anyone, even those without any kind of trust infrastructure. We've integrated our DLP engine with prepackaged content control lists of sensitive data types from Sophos Labs, and combined these to provide a new content-aware encryption policy engine that's easy to set up. Let's have a look at how this all works. The sender simply composes their email exactly the way they always have. If they want, they can force encryption by clicking a button in the toolbar that's available with our add-in for Outlook. Alternatively, the encryption can happen automatically based on the presence of sensitive data detected by the UTM in the email or attachments. If a DLP rule is triggered by content in the email or the attachments, the UTM can encrypt the email automatically, which packages everything up into a simple encrypted PDF. On the recipient end, they receive their email just as usual, with the only difference being that an SPX encrypted message includes the encrypted PDF as an attachment. They simply open the PDF and enter the password to decrypt it. The password can be created by the sender or the UTM and shared out of band with the recipient. Once opened, the PDF contains any custom branding that's been defined, as well as the message body and any attachments. They can easily reply by clicking a button which connects them back to the portal on the UTM to submit a secure reply. The key benefits of this approach are that it's easy for the users. No special software or infrastructure is required. Encrypted mail is treated just like normal email in that they're stored in the user's inbox just like the rest of their mail, and thus can be sorted or have rules applied if the user desires. Unlike competitors, we don't force users to log into a cloud portal to retrieve their encrypted mail. This means users can access their encrypted email whether they're online or offline or on any device. In fact, they can easily view their encrypted emails on iOS, Android, or any other platform with a PDF reader. It's much easier and much cleaner way of doing end-user email encryption with no infrastructure required and no messy keys or certificates to manage on your end. So how is this implemented in the UTM in 9.2? Well, there's a new entry under email protection for SPX encryption, and enabling it, as you might think, is as simple as flipping a switch. You really don't need to do much more than that. The default settings and templates will be perfect for most organizations, allowing them to be up and running in minutes. If they do want to customize the SPX settings, they can certainly do that. There are settings for branding, encryption level, password options, and even the instructions that appear in recipient emails. Another big part of this solution is the new DLP engine. You'll find a new tab under SMTP for setting up the data protection policy. When enabled, emails and attachments are scanned for the presence of sensitive data types and can be blocked from leaving the network or automatically encrypted with SPX. Notifications can also be sent to the right people in the event a rule is triggered. Now, there are literally hundreds of predefined sensitive data types included in the Sophos Labs content control lists. This allows admins to be up and running quickly. Of course, they can import or create new custom data types of their own if needed, and the CCLs will be periodically updated as needed by Sophos Labs. Now, with the addition of SPX encryption and DLP into the UTM, we've really given you a clear differentiator versus the competition. None of our competitors offer anything like this integrated into their UTM product. They all require you to purchase separate products, and even then, only FortiMail offers anything comparable, and it's well understood to be complex and expensive. Now, SonicWall simply has no competitive solution at all, and WatchGuard requires a standalone dedicated email appliance to do this, which kills the whole value proposition of using a UTM in the first place. The next area I want to cover is Web Application Firewall. We've also focused on making the WAF safer, more robust, and more feature-rich. Our objective for the Web Application Firewall in this release was to increase security and put the last pieces in place to be a great replacement for Microsoft's discontinued TMG product. We started by upgrading the WAF engine and greatly expanding the threat categories. We also added a much-needed option to redirect HTTP transparently to HTTPS, added a more secure rigid filtering option to decrease tolerance and risk, updated the UI in many places, and put one of the last pieces of the puzzle in place to replace Microsoft's TMG, reverse proxy authentication. We also upped the maximum file size for file uploads from 128 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. One of the key features administrators liked about Microsoft's TMG product was the reverse proxy authentication option that allowed them to add a layer of security between internet users and the Outlook Web Access Server. So we're super pleased to be introducing this exact same feature in UTM 9.2. It makes the UTM the ideal TMG replacement, opening up a huge opportunity for all of us as customers are just now starting to look for an alternative. You'll find a new option under Web Server Protection dedicated to reverse authentication setup. Here you can set up basic browser or form-based authentication for back-end servers complete with customizable form templates. You can then use the reverse proxy authentication profiles as part of the site path routing options to secure the desired servers, such as Outlook Web Access. As I mentioned earlier, there's also a new option when setting up your virtual web servers to transparently redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS. And we've both simplified and strengthened the Web Application Firewall profile protection settings with a simple Common Threats option that covers a bunch of new threat categories that will be updated regularly going forward. Now, when we talked to Microsoft TMG administrators about what features were most important to them, at the top of their list was Hyper-V support. And next on their list, although it's at the bottom of mine, was reverse proxy authentication. Of course, there were many other important features in between, as you can see here. The UTM is not only able to meet all of these requirements, but adds even more options and flexibility in all of these areas. And now, with reverse proxy authentication in UTM 9.2, we're now a complete TMG replacement. And if you look at the full spectrum of vendors competing for Microsoft TMG customers, there are a lot of players out there, but very few that can offer what TMG admins truly want and need. In fact, Sophos and Bluecoat are unique in offering all the features that many TMG administrators are looking for in a replacement. And we all know how successful Bluecoat will be at winning this kind of business. They're simply too expensive and complex to have any chance at this business. And since none of our UTM competitors have an integrated WAF with their UTM, we're unique amongst UTM vendors in offering a complete TMG alternative with reverse proxy authentication. The last major area I want to cover is how we've invested in making the IPS a lot faster, one of the most requested features from partners and customers. The objective here was simple: dramatically improve the IPS performance. Well, thanks to a huge investment in engine optimization and a new pattern aging system to scan only relevant patterns, the outcome has been better than expected, with a huge 50% boost in IPS performance. Here's a quick look at the new pattern aging option for IPS patterns. You can now set a rule age for patterns so that the IPS engine doesn't waste resources on scanning obsolete patterns. That concludes the 5 major areas of focus for UTM Accelerated 9.2. Now let's have a look at a few other noteworthy features. Two-factor authentication is new and is all about improving access security to key facilities of the UTM. It's a new tab under Authentication Services, and it's the home to our new one-time password feature for two-factor authentication. At the top of the screen is a list of users with assigned one-time password tokens. You can manage them from here. Settings are lower down where you can define the users for one-time user password, select an option to have the UTM create tokens that log in automatically using Google Authenticator, and decide which UTM facilities to protect with your two-factor authentication. You can see here how easy it is to use. You simply use the Google Authenticator app on your smartphone to get your revolving secret code, and append that to your regular password to access facilities that are set up to require two-factor authentication. Another new feature in 9.2 is added customization for Wi-Fi hotspots. There's a new back-end authentication option for hotspots with Active Directory, and new options to upload HTML, CSS, and image files to completely customize the login page. And finally, we've implemented red tunnel compression to optimize bandwidth usage for locations with poor internet access. So that covers all the major new features in UTM Accelerated. So let's wrap up by summarizing how all these great new features help you. As we discussed at the beginning, network security is a daunting challenge for any organization these days, and Sophos is laser focused on making complete protection simple. We have the complete solution, and it's easy to deploy and manage every day, and comes with the best support in the industry. And with UTM Accelerated 9.2, it's getting even better and simpler. UTM Accelerated gets its name in part because it's greatly accelerating our joint competitive advantage in the marketplace and our ability to win business together. We're doing some really amazing things by bringing enterprise-class network security to the mid-market, the kinds of technology and capability that Fortune 500 organizations pay big money for, like advanced threat protection, selective sandboxing, enterprise-level secure web gateway functionality, or email DLP and two-factor authentication. We're including those in our UTM at no extra charge. With 9.2, we continue to deliver more value than any other UTM with things like email encryption, WAF, and reverse proxy, and enhancements to our on-box reporting. Again, all at no extra charge. And with simplicity being core part of our DNA, we've done all this without making the product more complex. In fact, in many ways, we've made it much easier to manage, so customers will actually use these features. No one makes email data protection or web proxy transparency authentication or day-to-day tasks as easy as we do. And these are just a few examples. And we've added all this great new capability while at the same time making the UTM faster. IPS in particular is dramatically faster. It's a fantastic new release, and we really hope you're as excited about it as we are. So when it is all coming? The official launch date is March 4th, when you'll see a press release. General availability is planned for late February, and you can start downloading the final release then. It'll be rolled out to existing customers via the up-to-date starting in April, and they can manually upgrade earlier if they really need to. The website and product collateral will be ready for February 24th, prior to RSA show in the USA, and of course, if you haven't already got it, you can get your hands on the beta, which is available today. Thank you very much for your time in watching this video on UTM 9.2.